Hello learners, you're welcome to chapter 5 of grade 6 science. This chapter is separation of substances, and to make our understanding easy, we are going to divide it into two parts. So this part is part 1. Before we proceed further, we'll request you to like, subscribe and share the channel, and this will help many students of grade 6. Your action means a lot to me. The learning objectives for this chapter are: differentiate between pure and mixed substances, identify the need to separate substances, explain different methods of separation, apply the separation methods in real life situations, and lastly, describe solubility and saturated solution. Here we have a lively start to this chapter. In real life, we have seen various instances wherein substances are being separated from a mixture of materials. Let's see something.
We are here in the kitchen to see how the strainer works when liquid is poured through it. So here we have the hot mixture. So all the undesired components are left behind in the strainer. And we have pure liquid in the 2 cups.
Now that we have seen straining, let's go back to our discussion. On a similar line, grain is separated from the stalks during harvesting. Curd is churned to obtain butter. In chapter 3, we learned about ginning, where cotton seeds are separated from the fibers by hands or by machines. Do you like chilies? If at all you don't like chilies and find them in your food item, you are likely to separate them out carefully. Else, the eating effect will be crazy. It is likely easy to separate the big things than the smaller things. Why do we separate substances? Let us analyze this table before we find our answer. We have the separation process, purpose for which we do the separation, and lastly, what do we do with the separated components? First example is separate tea leaves. So this is done to remove the inedible tea leaves or impurities. We drink tea and discard tea leaves and impurities. Second example is churning curd to obtain butter. So this is done to separate butter and buttermilk. We use both the components separately. Lastly, we have separate stones from rice. This is done to separate the edible and inedible components. So edible component in this case is rice and inedible component is the stones. We discard the stones or husk. So we have found answer to our question. We separate the components either to recover useful components or to remove undesired components. Here we have few more examples. The first one is related to the separation of salt from seawater. The second one is related to removal of insoluble particles and germs from river water to make it drinkable. And thirdly, we have removal of fat from milk to make it healthier. This milk is also known as low fat or skimmed milk. Before we learn more about separation, let's have a sound understanding of the pure and mixed substances. Substances that contain only one kind of particles are called pure substances. Example, sugar, salt, and clean water. Pure substances have fixed properties like melting and boiling points. These change if impurities are present. Now some science facts. Atom is the basic unit of matter. Atoms of same kind or atoms of different kinds join to form molecules. Here we have an example of oxygen, which comprises 2 oxygen atoms, and carbon dioxide, which comprises 1 carbon and 2 oxygen atoms. Atoms and molecules of different elements join to form a compound like sodium chloride or salt and sulfuric acid. Coming over to mixed substances. A mixed substance or mixture is made of 2 or more pure substances that are simply mixed together. Example, sugar dissolved in water, salt dissolved in water, and air itself is a mixture of several gases. Further, they can be divided into homogeneous and heterogeneous mixtures. Let's have the definition for each of them. A homogeneous mixture is a solid, liquid or gaseous mixture that has the same proportions of its components throughout any given sample. Example, salt in water, vinegar and ink. whereas a heterogeneous mixture has components in which proportions vary throughout the sample. Example, seawater, pizza, salt and pepper. Now that we have learnt about pure and mixed substances, in this section we are going to discuss simple methods of separating the mixed substances. Keep your curiosity high and you may come across these methods in your day-to-day activities. Here we have the first method of separation, handpicking. Handpicking is a method of separating an unwanted solid impurity from a mixture using hands. If the quantity of impurities is not significantly large, handpicking is the most convenient method to separate substances. It is used at homes to separate the impurities which are stones, husk and stalk pieces from rice, wheat and pulses. Handpicking is only used when quantity of mixture is small or the components of mixture are easily identifiable. Next method of separation is threshing. After harvesting of rice or wheat crop, the stalks are sun-dried and thereafter the seeds separated from the stalks. It is quite a tedious task as grain seeds are small. The process that is used to separate the grain from stalks is called threshing. It involves beating the stalks to free the seed grains. Here are some pictures. Threshing can be done manually by humans or using animals. On a smaller scale, thresher can be used, and on a very large scale, combined harvester can be used. Winnowing is the next step after harvesting. It is a process used to separate heavier seeds from lighter components like dry stalk pieces and chaff by the action of wind. The easiest way is to stand on a higher level and then allow the mixture to fall on the ground. The wind blows away the lighter components and the heavier grains form a heap. Hand-operated fans are also quite popular these days. The separated chaff and stalk pieces become cattle fodder. Sieving. Sieving is a method of separating components of different sizes in a mixture using a sieve. Now, a sieve is a net or mesh fixed tightly onto a frame. We use a sieve in the kitchen to remove the impurities from wheat flour. Huge sieves are used at the construction sites to separate pebbles and stones from sand. Here are some pictures from the construction sites. Magnetic separation. Magnetic separation is a method of separating magnetic material like iron from non-magnetic material like sand or sulfur using a magnet or electromagnet. On a larger scale, huge-sized electromagnets are used. Sedimentation, decantation and filtration. At times, it may not be possible to separate the components of a mixture using the techniques which we have recently discussed. But before we learn the new concepts, let's have a slight understanding of solute and solvent. Solute, the substance that dissolves in a liquid, is called the solute. Solvent, the liquid in which the solute dissolves, is called the solvent. A science fact at this point of time: water is called universal solvent as a large number of substances dissolve in it. There are two quick references. Number 1, soluble substances which dissolve in water are separated by evaporation and condensation, whereas insoluble substances which do not dissolve in water are separated by sedimentation and decantation. Sedimentation. Sedimentation is a process by which insoluble particles in a liquid are allowed to settle down. Let's take the example of tea once again. In case there is no strainer, after few minutes the tea leaves start settling down. The tea can then be carefully poured in a way that the tea leaves are prevented from flowing. The settling down of the tea leaves is called sedimentation, and the settled tea leaves are called sediment. If the strainer is available, the process becomes quite fast. Let's discuss a science fact. The RO water filters use sediment filter to capture and remove particulate matter like dirt and debris from water. It does not work on sedimentation but acts as a sieve to remove the particles. Decantation. Decantation is the removal of the clear liquid without disturbing the sediments. Sedimentation and decantation both are used to remove the water-insoluble impurities in the water treatment plants. Sedimentation and decantation can also be used to separate a mixture of two liquids that do not mix with each other. Example, oil and water can be separated by this process. We allow the mixture to stand for some time and this results into the formation of two separate layers. Thereafter, the top layer can be poured out. Also, a separation funnel can be used. It has a flask that is narrow at the bottom and open at the top. It also has a stopcock to control the liquid flow. Once the layer of the liquid has been removed from the funnel, the stopcock is closed. Here we have an activity. The aim of the activity is to separate two components of the mixture by sedimentation and decantation. Materials required are 2 glasses, sand, water, stirrer or spoon, and the procedure is mix sand and water, stir the mixture using stirrer or spoon, leave the mixture to settle down. Once settled, pour out the water into other glass. So we are going to see these 4 procedural steps in action with the photographs. So this is the first one wherein we mix the sand. This is the second one where we stir and leave the mixture. And then finally, once the things are settled, we pour out the water into other glass. So we see the 2 processes, sedimentation and decantation, into action. With this, we come to an end of part 1 of the chapter 5, separation of substances. In case you have any questions or queries, please don't hesitate to write a mail to learning.space.mk@gmail.com. We will meet again in the second part. Till then, happy learning!